is learning more about food and how to grow your food, how to access better food, and how to support other people giving you access to food. Like, it's been taken out of our direct hands for too long, and all these events that you're part of today and this whole week, in the last 2 weeks, it's one more wonderful and community building way that we can all do something. So thank you for coming, because you might be inspired to do something or teach something else after this is done. And today I'm talking about my favorite thing, which is plants. Okay, my favorite tie or second favorite thing, because it's plants and animals. So I love animals and plants, and I've been growing gardens for over 25 years. I have an apothecary, and I've been working as an aromatherapist for 25 years. I studied biology and psychology, and I specialized in zoology in university. And I basically lived around plants my entire life. So I really like to look at the big picture of everything. And I'm hoping that medicinal garden talk, our presentation today, helps you to see the big picture and the small picture within your own backyard or your own front yard. So if you have any questions or something that we don't get to, you're welcome to email me or find me at Healing Muse, which is the apothecary in my business, my shop. And I'm happy to DM back or email you back. So there's lots of different ways to connect if we don't get through everything today. So don't you worry. The plants that you need will find you. That's the way it is, basically. All the medicine that you need usually finds you. So just stay open in your heart and listen, and then you will learn something and remember the best parts that you need. So I'm going to start my screen sharing, and let's see. We can go to this. Perfect. Okay. So just want to make sure everybody can see this all right. I think you can just nod. Okay. Perfect. So this is all about different aspects of plants and their medicines, and how to grow your medicinal garden and how to plan a medicinal garden. And I also put in here how to work with your plants so they become medicine, because there's so many different ways to do that. So this is a medicine garden. I'm going to try and make this smaller so I can see everything. It's weird. Let me make this smaller. Oh, good. There you guys go. Medicine garden planning guide for growing and using your herbals for herbal infusions and more. Teas, compresses, pretty much anything. Lots of things that we grow become medicine. And I have here a reminder, all the different ways you can reach me. It's at the bottom. So if you want to get a hold of me or connect, let me know. It's pretty much everywhere on here. Let me just go to next here. Somehow this, oh, there we go. Okay, so this is, I think, one of the most important things I try and teach. And I think many of you already know this or believe this or live this, are a part of this, that I don't really need to tell you what to plant, because you already know that. There's a natural affinity we have for, let's say, Italian cooking, or growing the wildest pioneer plants, or growing only the smelliest plants. Like, we have this need or this tendency, we're drawn and attracted to things. So there's a big part of us that's already aware of what we need. But here we're talking about what some of the plants look like and what we can do with them. So what I need to tell you is what a healing garden is, what role you can play in the growing a garden like that, how you can create when you grow the garden, how to listen to the earth. Yes, we can listen to the earth. The earth, she's talking all the time. How to watch for signs from the plants, and then when to stop and listen, which is daily, but also when to stop and listen when other things are going on. So we're going to see and have a look. And somehow this doesn't let me, there we go. So the healing garden has a few parts, and I outline them as following. It's got soil, but it's soul. Your healing garden has to have soul in the soil. And it's not that it doesn't have soul, but we are not taught that it has a soul. So your healing garden makes it the garden becomes a healing medicinal garden when you tread lightly, when you bring in love, when you bring in awareness, when you bring in attention, when you bring in natural fertilizer, when you bring in organic seeds. when you bring in microbiota, when you bring in composting, when you bring in any of these things, you are promoting the living aspect, the vitality and the soul part of the soil. So it becomes much more, like 100 or 1,000 times medicinal in that way. And this is from one of the excerpts. I have the references in the back of the presentation. Does soil have a soul? All life depends on soil, and many cultures and religions have considered that it have a soul, a sensitivity, an innermost living force. For that reason, it was believed that land could not be owned and that humans were merely its caretakers, preserving it for future generations. And so this is such an important part of growing medicine, that we are the caretakers, we are the stewards, we are the watchers, we are not the owners. And we've been running, our garden group, Lakeshore Environmental Gardening Society, has been running open community garden at the food bank in Etobicoke. And since we started it, I always said to everybody, we are the garden stewards. Like it's a communal awareness and a communal growth. And you can use the same approach at home as well, that you're the steward of the land. And I saw this earlier, and I really like this, that this quote helps people who summarize, who love plants, to summarize how we live, that we come from the earth and we return to the earth, and in between we garden. And gardening is supporting growth in just about everything. So we are the stewards of the soil, and the soil has a soul. So it becomes a wonderful, magical dance. This is from today. So we're looking here, I don't know if you guys can see, but they're little tiny leftover rose hips on the paths all along the ravines and all the Toronto's riverbanks. There's food growing, gardens are growing in the great outdoors. So these are rose hips that grow wild, a wonderful medicine. And I bring that up because there's so many plant medicines that we don't have to grow in our backyard, because they grow in radical abundance and are available to us to try and explore and experience. This is also another picture of a raspberry cane. They grow everywhere, wild in the great outdoors. And raspberry leaf is a wonderful herb to dry for tea. And again, it's something that you can grow in your backyard or front yard, but it is accessible in the great outdoors. So there's a distinction between how much room you need to grow medicine. This is from this morning. Anybody know what this is? Rhonda and I were already talking about this. And if you don't know, I'll tell you in a minute. This is, I need to go back to. Here's another picture of this. So we got this picture and this picture. They look almost exactly the same, but they're not. Now you can see the difference between the plants, they're slightly different. There's two plants that look very similar and they grow in the same areas. And this is what we're looking forward to. So we're gonna move right along. This is coming in a few weeks, you guys watch. So moving on, when we're looking at the things that are growing in our gardens or what you wanna plant in your garden, you also have to look at permaculture cycles, which is what's happening right now. The cycle of life, spring is emerging, the snow is melting. And when we're looking at the connection, the interconnectedness of everything, we have to observe what the earth is doing in the season, what the earth is doing this month, what the plants are doing, what the animals are doing. There's minerals to consider, and then there's our human interaction to consider. So all of these things enter into your healing garden. And then I find this is also important that I don't see in a lot of books or a lot of references, a compassionate heart where you choose to coexist with nature. As opposed to, like in traditional gardening, there's this hacking away and taming and controlling and minimizing and ordering. And there's, in a lot of traditional gardening, there's a lot of very strict coordination of what gets to happen in the garden. And my position, my invite to you is to view a medicinal garden as a place where you allow the ebb and flow and you allow the seasons and you allow the annual cycles and changes to show you what the garden really wants to do. So some year, for example, you might have an abundance of mint, and maybe you're pulling your hair out because there's too much mint and you're trying to get rid of it. But then you might notice the next year, there's an overabundance of geraniums. The geraniums do really well and the mint's not doing so well. Or you might have an overabundance of anise hyssop, or the dill's doing really well. And the following year, the dill disappears. So we can plan out some ideas, but it's also wise to step back and allow the garden to show you the way. And that's what I mean by having a compassionate heart, by saying, hey, what are we going to create together this year? What is going to grow well? Where are we supposed to go? Which direction? And then I put in a few different samples of herbs and medicinals that just naturally happen in the wild, maybe in your front yard or on the public laneway or your neighbor's front yard, and people are pulling them out. I think a lot of people might recognize this. This is plantain. Plantain works really well as a poultice, as a compress. And there's a lot of medicinal plants that we don't have to plant. They're just always growing and volunteering themselves in our front yard or in the parkland. So let us extend our view of medicinals as, if we're going to plan a medicinal garden, let's look at things that are harder to come by or that we would really like more of. Because there's a lot of healing herbs out there that just you can encounter just about anywhere you go. Okay, and then lastly, a healing garden has an abundance philosophy. Now, I'm governed by this abundance philosophy, and that's why we have legs. That's why I started our Lakeshore Environmental Gardening Society years ago. We have an eco hub, we have a seed library, because we all have something other people don't. We all have something that we can share. So a medicinal garden is also another way of looking at saying you only need 5 dill plants, but if you grew 20 dill plants and gave half of them away because they grow really well in your backyard, then you are sharing the natural abundance, the natural course of the way our gardens grow, the way the earth functions. So if you have the time and space, plant a little bit more and just give it away, or return it back to the earth, or offer it to the animals. So a healing garden has all of these components. And there's bonus points if you put in the chat what this giant plant is. So I let my plants grow robust. You don't have to do that, I get it. But I let all kinds of volunteers grow wherever they want. So this giant plant, who's, I'll give you guys a wonderful hint. He's nature's toilet paper. I love that saying. This giant plant grew to be about 4 feet across because he was in a raised barrel with other plants. So let's see if you guys can figure that one out. Put in the chat if you know what he is. So technically he doesn't need to be grown in a barrel because he's a wild plant that grows everywhere, but he is a medicinal. So I just let him grow. Okay, and then I give you the challenge, and then you have, the name is Mullen. And this is what he looks like this morning. So this is the time. This is the time to start seeing your babies. Another way to get into medicinal gardening is to start seeing, go for a walkabout every week, at least once a week, and start looking around to see what is volunteering itself in your garden. What is actively coming back? What wants to be in your life? What is present and easily accessible to you? Because a lot of times we're looking at a list of books, right? And we'll go through, oh, I want this from Richter's, and I want this from Richter's, and I want this from the seed library. And we make a list of like 50 things we want to grow. But there's already 15, 20 wonderful medicinals that are growing in your front yard, just waiting for you to notice them. And I don't know why, but I really love Mullen. So there he is. He's in the spotlight for me. And you guys can tell me how you feel about Mullen. And I have a couple quotes here because they're fun. They're fun. And then we're like close to a break, I think. I don't know that there are any shortcuts to doing a good job. I love that. Like if you're taking a shortcut to a good job, that means you're not really entering into a proper relationship with that work. And I think a medicinal garden, represents this. So if you wish to grow, these are anise hyssop seeds. I don't know if you guys can see my camera, but anise hyssop seeds and organic chamomile seeds. And if I rush through collecting them, then I believe that a bit of that rushing is a part of the gathering and the harvesting. So if you take your time and you're present to what you are doing, you are imparting even greater medicine into that seed, into that herb, into that plant. So everything that we do is a part of the medicine and how the garden grows. So these are some of the things that I consider important, and you guys can tell me in the Q&A what you think, if it makes any sense to you, if you like it, if you don't like it. When I write in here also, I think that aromas make each moment feel good. So plant something aromatic for tea or for foods. Always plant something that smells really good. Okay, let's have a little fun before we have a break for our first Q&A. What are these plants? So I'm gonna go here. And let's see, do we have in the chat? What are these plants? Mullein, good, you guys got mullein, I love that. Perfect, garlic mustard, very good. There was garlic mustard in the previous ones, and it was also motherwort. Motherwort and garlic mustard before in the first question. Right, so we have nettle and daisy, very good. Okay, 2 points for all the people that said first. No, German chamomile's close. The same family, looks very similar, but we've got daisy and nettle. Both of these are wonderful to grow in your garden. As many of you know, might know, nettle grows everywhere, so don't grow in the garden because it grows in the wild, in the parkland. So unless you have a raised container. Let me see if I can go here. Okay, so one of the ways we can use medicines in the garden is to grow things that we can eat. That's the best medicine. I mean, you can have herbal oils, you can have dried leaves and flowers for teas, you can create tinctures and alcohols, or you can just eat them as they grow, like parsley and basil and dill and marjoram, oregano. And here we have daisies. You can eat daisy flowers. You can eat nettle. You can eat citrus blossoms, clover, dandelions, hibiscus, honeysuckle, all of these things, rose of Sharon. I know a lot of gardeners complain about rose of Sharon because it self-seeds so readily, but you can eat it and keep it small. So that's another wonderful herbal, medicinal, and vibrant color plant that you can use in your salads. So there's so many different ways to grow your medicinal garden and make it look attractive, inviting, and serve you and support you. Okay, another quiz. Name some of these plants. Okay, how about the one in the middle? What's the plant in the middle? Let's see. Who's the first person that's going to guess? So we have blue here. Well, let's see who answered. Barrage, very good. Okay, excellent. That's barrage, very good. And what else do we have here? Okay, how about on the left here? There's a bunch of plants that I have brought in for a foraging workshop, and we're talking about all these. And borraja in Spanish, very good. Dill. Okay, yes, so we have goldenrod. Anybody know what this is? Goldenrod's very good for respiratory ailments, supports teas. And again, you don't have to grow that in your backyard garden because it grows everywhere. We have mountain ash here. We have burdock leaf for show and tell. And then we have some wild dandelion leaves. So all of these things can grow. And then this one here, anybody know what this one is here? This is coming up in June. And it's going to grow everywhere. No, very good, close. Little small white delicate flowers. It's hard to see the comparison. They grow on trees and they flower in June. And you can smell them a mile away. When these plants here are in bloom, they're a wonderful medicine. They make a soft, gentle tea, and you can store them over the winter. No, very good, close. Yeah, linden, MT. Marcy, very good. It's linden. It makes a wonderful tea. You can make linden vodka. I mean, you can make it into a bunch of different things. It's fantastic. Yeah, so there's so many different things that are growing around us that are medicines. Medicines, tasty, delicious, And now let's move on to the next thing. So just to remember, right? Remember to stop and listen. Remember to look at your plants, take time, and you'll realize how many of them already are medicinal. And they're there for you, waiting for you. Okay, so I think we're almost close to my paw. This is, let's stop here for a question, a couple of questions. We're going to stop here because then we can go over some of these ideas. Okay, so